Did you ever have your heart set on something that you'll be doing your whole life, and then you heard a voice that says, nah, better think that over? Our guest today can tell you what happened. Hello again. Welcome to Wordnet. That's the word we're talking about. I'm your host, Jack Knight, and I'm very happy to have with me today our guest, Don Manuel Valencia, who had a life-changing, or at least vocation-changing episode early in his life. Don Manuel, it's nice to have you here today.
Well, thank you very much. And I really do appreciate that you're calling me Don Manuel. That is a very nice title.
It is, because a Don, well, if you were Italian, it'd be a different story probably. But certainly in Hispanic, that's there's a wonderful word, which I can't remember, but it means a good thing. You're from Mexican heritage.
Yes.
Grew up in Arizona as a young boy in the city, how can you call it city? Jerome, Arizona.
Call it a ghost town.
A ghost town.
That's right.
I know that I've been there a few times and recently, and it seems to be bustling with tourism. And the mines that used to be the highlight of working up there been gone. I understand your dad, did he work in the mines?
My dad was born in Jerome. He was a miner. This was a copper mining town back then. My uncles were miners. My grandfather came from Mexico and became a miner in Jerome as well. I was born there, and I was there. I still have memories, even though we left when I was about 6 years old when they shut down the mine. But I still have wonderful memories of Jerome.
Now, you're 5 years old, and up there, you obviously had a hint that a vocation was in your future.
Well,
tell me about that.
You know, Jack, from as far back as I can remember, I really believed that I had a vocation to the priesthood. And you know how boys did back, this is, before Vatican II, setting up an altar and boys would pretend that they were priests. I did that. I wanted to become a priest more than anything in the world, and not just any priest. I wanted to be, as I was introduced later, to a wonderful community of religious called the Passionist brothers and priests. I wanted to be a Passionist priest more than anything in the world.
As a kid, going to parochial school and going to Mass and all of that, we used to get Necco wafers, candy, and a little host-sized wafer, and they would come in chocolate and licorice, and they were the white ones. And we would pick out all the white ones, and we would play priest, and we would give each other Holy Communion with these little white wafers.
Well, you see, you were more creative than I was. I just got something and I cut some, the white bread, Weber's bread back then. And that's what we would do, slam it down.
Right, yeah, sure. I do recall going to communion in Mexico City, and the hosts are this big. And trying to get that.
That's right. You got your money's worth there.
I did indeed. I did indeed. So you eventually were accepted into the Passionists.
Yes, I entered the Passionist seminary.
Where was that?
This was in Missouri, near St. Louis, a small farming town called Warrenton, Missouri. And there, as a 13-year-old, going on 14, right after 8th grade, I entered the seminary, and I was there for 4 years. 4 very joyful years. And after graduation from high school, went home for 2 weeks during the summer. And then this was the time, Jack, that I really loved. I was now entering what is called the novitiate. That year when we would have the privilege, the honor of being garbed in the Passionist habit and beginning to study the way of life of the Passionists, reading and studying and reflecting on the rule of St. Paul of the Cross, the founder of the Passionists. The only thing I did not enjoy was being awakened at about 4:30 or so in the morning with a bell to get up to chant the Liturgy of the Hours, which we did.
Sure.
And then after that, about a half hour of meditation followed by Mass. I am not a morning person. Before 10 a.m., as I tell our retreats at Mater Dolorosa, my smile is phony. I'm not awake until after 10 a.m. to this day. But I loved it.
When you have that passion, as I might say, to make a pun, to be a Passionist, it must have been a shock to your system of enormous size when you heard a voice.
Yes. About 3 months before I was to take vows. By the way, these are vows of poverty, chastity, obedience. But the Passionists take a fourth vow. They call it their first vow, to keep alive the memory of the passion of Jesus Christ, to preach Christ crucified. That was the charism, the gift that I had burning in my own heart. 3 months before we were to take vows, I was awakened much earlier than that bell by a voice. And that voice startled me awake. And it simply said loudly, "It's time to go home." And I awoke, startled by that voice. And I knew instinctively, intuitively, that this was not a malevolent voice. No. This was a holy, a very benevolent voice. And I knew immediately it was the voice of God. But I didn't know what to do with it. It was so contradictory to my experience. I could not be happier, ecstatic actually, at being with the Passionists and getting ready to take those 3 vows, but for me, most importantly, that first vow. And I struggled with that for a couple of months before I knew what I had to do.
And so you went home.
I spoke with my novice master, and he said, "Manuel, I think it is time for you to go home. But if you ever wish to return, we will welcome you with open arms." And that made me so happy. But then he added, "But I don't think you'll be coming back." And I was so heartbroken. I got on the train back to Los Angeles and feeling so alone, so abandoned by God. And I am ashamed to say, but I was angry at God, wondering why I had to go home when I had given my all to become a Passionist priest.
There's a saying trying to explain why God does things. And it's about my prayer. God hears your prayer. He knows what you want. But sometimes he says no.
That's right.
So now, there you are. You've had this really heart-rending experience. What came after that?
After that, I struggled, wondering, what is my vocation? And a few years later, I happened to be at a Christmas party, right about now. My parents said, some friends are having a party. Why don't you come with us? So I went, and there was a lot of dancing, a lot going on. Among the Mexicans, it's noisy, and kids running around, lots of food. And I was sitting there while there were other people, lots of people dancing. And I saw what I now say was this Mexican cutie who was dancing with somebody not as good looking as I am. But she was dancing with some, and that instant, Jack, at that moment, I knew immediately she was going to be my wife. We had not uttered word one, but I knew. It was as though God had told me, there she is. We have been married 49 years.
Oh, big anniversary coming up.
It's coming up. And not one micro moment of doubt that God called me to the vocation of the married life. And I might add, 49 years, and my wife is still crazy about me.
No kidding. My wife, she was just crazy to have picked me. And children?
2 children, a son, Manuel the third. That's a very Mexican thing.
I'm John the third.
You're John the third.
Yeah.
You must be part Irish or something.
Exactly, a whole
Irish,
bunch Irish.
we
Yes.
Mexicans, there's a
And
lot
my
of
son is John the fourth.
Oh, look at that, you see? And then our daughter, Monica. Yes, 2 wonderful children.
That's great. Well, when did this idea of going back to religious life, as it were, come back to you?
Well, my wife and I were, of course, we go to Mass regularly. We're faithful, and we're very devout Catholics. We were at Mass at St. Rita, Sierra Madre, and as you know, we would always, on leaving, there's the pastor, and then there was always the deacon, a wonderful deacon, Ernie Nosari, very holy man, I might add. And we would always go out, and they would say hello. But on this one occasion, which he said for no reason at all, Deacon Ernie tapped me on the shoulder and said, you need to consider the diaconate.
Oh, we're going to talk more about that when we come back. We're going to take a break now, but I'm sure you'll be very interested to hear the rest of Don Manuel's story. So stay with us.
Do you want to fall in love with God? I'm sure we all want to. The book of Psalms contains the directions. Thousands of years ago, people like you and me talked to God out of the depths of their hearts, revealing an intimate love. Psalms are the expression of the faith in God by people around 3,000 years ago. God was not a mere abstract creator, but was present, involved, and a real person of power and emotions. Now, when we read or listen to the Psalms, we can know the intensity of this love. Entering into the influence of the Psalms, we can find a path to know and love God. To know more about the Psalms, you should get a copy of Father Mike Manning's booklet, The Psalms. It will help you to understand the 150 Psalms better as he has categorized them. He uses the technique of acts: adoration, contrition, thanksgiving, and supplication. Get your copy today and know the categories. Learn to pray with the Psalms.
Call the number on the screen or email us. You can also get it through our website. Get your copy today.
We're back with Deacon Don Manuel Valencia. Well, we were talking about your family life now, and you're working as a deacon. That's a full-time job.
It is, yes.
Tell us about the things you are responsible for.
Well, it is actually a dual ministry for me because my parish at St. Rita, incidentally, that's been my parish since I was about 12 years old.
They know you.
Boy, do they know me. And they still ask that I become a deacon. Who can explain that? But my wife and I, we went through diaconate formation. And after about our 4 years, two things happened. One, 1 month before I was to be ordained, the Passionist priest, the retreat director at Mater Dolorosa Retreat Center in Sierra Madre, called me to his office and said, Manuel, with your ordination, would you consider joining the Passionist preaching team here at Mater Dolorosa and become part of our weekend preaching team? And I said, wait a minute, Father, an Irishman, by the way, I might add. I said, do you mean that I would be joining you Passionists in that charism to preach Christ crucified every weekend to retreatants? And he said, yes. And I thought to myself, God is so good. I misunderstood. I thought God wanted me to be a Passionist priest. I was wrong. Priest, no. Passionist in that charism, yes. But not as a priest, but as a married deacon. And so I understood that my plans were not the plans that God had for me. God had different plans. And so that is what happened. And so I became a deacon at my parish, and there for about 12 years or so, my wife and I taught RCIA, baptisms every month, preaching on a regular basis at our parish.
RCIA, tell us what that stands for, because a lot
It
of
is
our
the
people...
Rite of Christian Initiation for Adults.
Yeah.
And it is to bring adults either back into the faith or those who wish to become Catholic to enter the faith. And so I did that for 12 years. Incidentally, Jack, I didn't want to do that. Deacon Ernie Nassari said, Manuel, now that you're a deacon, we want you to teach RCIA. And I said, no, I'm not a teacher. Well, as it happened, Deacon Ernie was no longer able to teach because of health reasons. And so I had to. And I'm telling you, Jack, that these became 12 of the most blessed years of my life. Not only did I teach RCIA, the faith, I learned from those to whom I was supposed to be teaching. It was wonderful.
As an actor, and had an opportunity to take students that we were working with, Lynn Redgrave, famous British actor, Oscar winner, and she went off to do a show, and I took over giving people a place to work out, as it were, and I learned more from these people who didn't know very much about acting than they did, I think. And so it's a gift that's given to you as a teacher. I'm sure all teachers
That's right.
have learned something from their students that they never even considered before.
That's right.
And so a real blessing. Education now is continuing for you?
Yes. Thanks to the Archdiocese of Los Angeles, where I am a deacon, they have scholarships and grants for deacons who wish to continue their education to get a master's. And so I took advantage of that, and I'm getting my master's of a theology degree at Loyola Marymount University.
And when do you expect to graduate? I want to be there.
In about a year. In about a year, as soon as they can root out all of my heresies.
Heresy, that's a word we don't hear very often anymore. We're thinking about what it was like to, at this stage in your life, to going back to school, studying theology. But you said that there were some people who were especially helpful to you in your studies.
Yes. you know, several people, they were my professors, of course, outstanding. Several of them Jesuits, mostly lay Catholics, professors, just outstanding. But in addition to that, those who are passionists in the community, many of whom I remember as my own teachers when I was studying, I would call, I would send emails with my papers. What do you think of this? What is going on? Especially in ethics. What do you think? And I would get help from them. So they were very, very helpful.
So a resource that you
That
probably
I
didn't expect until you decided to go into the program.
And these themselves are just wonderful men, gifted, holy men.
3 words that we spoke about earlier are very important to you. And I want to know why. And I'm sure our audience would be interested in knowing about Trinity, Christology, and connection to
our roots, our Jewish roots. Yes.
our Jewish roots.
Yes.
What is a Catholic deacon talking about Jewish roots? Well, the answer is obvious. Christ himself was
Christ
Jewish.
himself. And not only that, Jack, my great-grandfather, my family, from my great-grandfather and before, Jewish.
Really? And did any of that carry down to your generation?
Well, because of persecution, there were what were called crypto-Jews, underground Jews, and ostensibly Catholic. But as time went on, this was forgotten, and this took prominence. And so my family gradually became Catholic.
What time frame was that?
Well, if the last, and I say this by way of appreciation, the last holdout as a Jew, practicing Jew, was my great-grandfather. Everyone else became Catholic.
How about that?
Yeah.
And you still like matzah and...
I did not even know that I had Jewish roots until my mother told me about 15 years ago, because it had remained a secret because, again, of
course,
persecution. Yes.
So it must have been a huge surprise to you. What
It
was
was
your
not
reaction?
only a surprise, it became something of for me, it was a revelation about who I am. And although the chain broke, I normally wear the Star of David to honor my Jewish roots. And
That's lovely.
Yeah.
I'm even learning some Hebrew.
Look at that.
So, Manishma,
Talk about,
how you doing?
Talk about ecumenical.
Yeah.
Boy.
That's and that's what God wants.
Yes.
He wants us not to forget our old roots. He wants us to remember that those who went before us were persecuted, that they persevered, and where we are today is a much better place.
That's right. That is right.
So, what's next?
Well,
You'll get your degree,
I will get my degree.
and then what do you hope to do?
Well, I will continue retreat ministry. But, largely the reason why I am studying, going back to school, Jack, is because, at this time in my life, so many questions, not doubts, but wanted to understand more deeply Trinity. How did that come about among a people that is monolithic? The first Christians were Jews. How did we understand Jesus as Christos, as Messiah, as Christ? And from there we understand Christology, we understand Trinity. And so from all of that, our Jewish roots, and we need to understand that if we are to really understand who we are today as Catholics, who we are, such as we are the sum total of all of our spiritual ancestors going back more than 2,000 years.
And what better place to find out about all of that? It's called the Bible.
That's right.
I want to thank you
right.
very much, Don Manuel, for being with us today. Yours has been an interesting story. I often wondered if Mrs. Gilhooly, my neighbor back home, was right when she said, "John, you'll make a wonderful priest." Nice old Irish lady. Well, I didn't become a priest, but I hope that I'm still carry on the work of God.
God bless you, and God bless Mrs.
Thank
Gilhooly.
you. And God bless those people out there who watch the program. And I want to ask God to watch over your ministry, to bring happiness and joy from the work that you're doing. And I'd like very much for our audience to continue to support our program. Ask God's blessing on you, particularly those of you who are sitting at home wondering, well, what can I do? There must be something out there that's going to be of value to me and to my family, to my community, to my church.
That's right.
Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Jack.
It's a
Thank
pleasure.
you very
It's a
much.
pleasure.
Do you want to fall in love with God? I'm sure we all want to. The book of Psalms contains the directions. Thousands of years ago, people like you and me talked to God out of the depths of their hearts, revealing an intimate love. Psalms are the expression of the faith in God by people around 3,000 years ago. God was not a mere abstract creator, but was present, involved, and a real person of power and emotions. Now, when we read or listen to the Psalms, we can know the intensity of this love. Entering into the influence of the Psalms, we can find a path to know and love God. To know more about the Psalms, you should get a copy of Father Mike Manning's booklet, The Psalms. It will help you to understand the 150 Psalms better as he has categorized them. He uses the technique of acts: adoration, contrition, thanksgiving, and supplication. Get your copy today and know the categories. Learn to pray with the Psalms.
Call the number on the screen or email us. You can also get it through our website. Get your copy today.